Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back.
I'm Jo'Van,
And I'm Brandice.
and you're watching
Closing the Gap.
Thank you all for joining us today. We have a special guest.
We do. We have Mr. Frantonio Wesley. He's the Family Service Counselor with Dignity Memorial. And Mr. Wesley, please tell us about yourself.
Yes. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
joining us.
Thank you
You're
both.
our first guest of 2022.
Wow, I get to be number one. All right, I like that
You
seat.
set
I like
the
that
tone,
seat.
so you know
Okay,
what I'm
okay. Hey,
Yes, of the
anybody
year.
come up here not in the suit? They,
Right. Listen, you're our best dressed.
Right.
We've never been dressed this.
No.
Wow,
No.
cut it
You're
out.
putting us to shame.
I
When
know,
you
no.
walked in immediately, I just looked down at myself. I was just like,
I know.
Where were you on our anniversary episode?
Right.
yeah, it was bad. Yeah, that's a whole story for
Really?
another time.
All
Yes.
right.
Yes,
But
please,
yes,
introduce
please.
yourself.
Well, again, like you said, my name is Frantonio Wesley. I am a family service counselor with Dignity Memorial. And pretty much rundown of my job is I assist families in putting together pre-need arrangements and also at-need arrangements. I've been in the business probably a little bit over a year and a half now,
Okay.
but I have about, over 17 years probably of customer service experience and helping customers, through difficult situations.
Oh, wow.
So I was at a point where I was working with a bank,
Right.
kind of doing repetitive type work,
Right.
and decided I wanted to kind of do something to make more of an impact, not just in the community, but just with people in general.
Mhm.
And so that was the main reason why I decided to make a jump. I decided to jump into the funeral business. And ever since I got started with my first interaction with the family, I've been hooked ever since.
Oh,
So,
wow.
man,
Wow.
I really enjoy what I do.
Oh wow! Because some people can was like that's their most difficult time, and
Yeah.
you enjoy you. I mean, you do a good job of like comforting them, but also
Yes.
giving them great information.
Yes.
So, what is some of your experiences as far as like what are some things that people need to know to be prepared for the inevitable?
Good question. One of the main things people need to do to be prepared is first just accept the fact that death is real. It's going to happen to every single one of us at some point in time. The key is we don't know when, we don't know where, we don't know how, but we know it's going to happen. So one of the main ways to be prepared is to accept that fact, know that it's going to happen, and then put in place to say, okay, I know this is going to happen. How am I going to make sure it happens the way I would like it to?
Right.
And so a lot of times when death happens, people are unprepared.
Yes.
And then the unprepared situations can turn ugly sometimes. They can be, they can be good for people. So the main thing you want to do is accept the fact that it's going to happen. And once you accept that and know, then the next thing is say, okay, you know what? This is how I like it to look. This is how I would like it to be. This is where I would like it to be. So that's my main goal, is try to make people get in a position to be prepared.
Okay. So what are some things that you need to do?
Main thing that you want to do is once you make the decision that you're going to be prepared and you want to do it, I always tell people to share that information with a family member, a friend, a coworker, somebody who's close to you, because when that time comes, someone would have to come and represent you and put these arrangements in place. So once you understand that, yeah, this is what I want to do, share that information. Don't be, concealed with it. Share it with a family member. Once you share it with them, then your next step is to decide where would I like to go. Grandma and them buried over here in Eastlake. Auntie buried over in West End. And so where would I like to be laid to rest? Without making that decision, you leave that in the hands of someone else. And you may, some people always say, well, I want to be buried next to grandma. I want to be where, so-and-so is. So you have an opportunity to go ahead and take that off of someone's plate. And so once you decide where you want to be, then it's steps that, you follow along from that point. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people don't like talking about it because they feel like, I don't know, it's like, not necessarily taboo, but it's like superstitious.
Yes,
Like,
yeah.
I can't talk about that death. Like, I don't want to make those arrangements because I feel like,
Like somehow you're causing it by talking about it.
Right.
But that's like, okay.
Come on. It's not,
we don't talk about that. Like, no.
No, it's not. But that's a great point, because a lot of people feel like, if I talk about it or if I address it, then I'm speaking that into existence.
Yeah.
Well, you're not. You're making a plan for something that going to happen. Just like, you have
Such
your,
a great point.
yeah, and how people have your children, and we plan for them to go pro to the NBA or go to the NFL, or you have a young scholar and you plan for them to go to Harvard or somewhere like that in schooling. and you do everything you can to prepare them from day one or day you recognize to be successful when it gets to that point.
You know, I love that example because that seems counterintuitive because when people are preparing to go to like the NFL or Harvard, that's not guaranteed.
Absolutely
but death
right.
is guaranteed.
It
so
is,
why
right.
wouldn't you plan for that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
That's
like
a
you
great
say, we
example.
prepare for things that nothing in life that we know necessarily is guaranteed.
Yeah.
Except that. So my job and what I try to do is make sure people feel comfortable with the acceptance of it, and then let's talk about it.
Right.
You know, you don't have to necessarily it's not a situation where you have to make a decision on the spot. You know, it's not like buy this house now or else,
But get it started.
Get it started.
Right.
Get it started.
Yeah,
And once you do that, you setting yourself up for success.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, like tell someone, because a lot of times, especially when you're grieving and you're hurt, that's when the family kind of bickering over things, so they
Right.
know what your wishes are, where you want to be buried, with all your whole plans. That kind of leaves all of that, like guesswork
Yes,
out of it,
yes,
and
yes.
that way there's no arguing. Like, well, I want so and so to be here. I want, like, no, this is what he or she said.
Yeah,
This is what
right,
in order
right.
their wishes. So
Yes, yes, because that's a great point, because that's one of the main obstacles that you have when you're not prepared. Just say you come from a family and you have 6 siblings.
Oh,
and,
right.
You know, your 6 siblings and you have a spouse. And you've passed, and now your 6 siblings are saying, well, yeah, I want my sister to be over here at this cemetery next to great-grandma Grady. And the spouse is like, well, no, I want my wife to be here with me,
Right, right.
And so that can cause family issues and prolong the process. And the whole time, people grieving and, trying to get to a position of closure, but can't do so. And then that's just that side. We haven't talked about the financial side.
that was
you know?
exactly.
I mean, and then so along top with trying to figure out where you want to go or what the plans to put in place, it costs now,
Yeah.
Funerals aren't getting cheaper. And the more and longer you live, the more it's going to cost when it's your time to die. So you have to start, the earlier you start and prepare, the better you set those things up. And with what I do with pre-arrangements, you're able to actually lock in your price.
Oh, wow.
So once you make those arrangements, whatever it costs that day, don't matter if you live 20, 30, 40 years from now, you're set at that price. If it's paid off,
wow.
then you're good. If it's
Oh, wow.
not, then you just, will pay whatever the remaining balance is. But it
Awesome.
certainly works good that way.
Okay, and so speaking of that, what is the average funeral running, so people know like what's a good plan to invest in and get?
I would say right now the average cost of a basic funeral, I would say anywhere between $7,000 to $10,000.
Yeah.
And that's the average cost of a basic funeral. So
The
most
basic.
people don't really have that amount in savings. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so at the time when someone passes, all of that is due at one time before they would even put them in the ground. There's no payment arrangements you can make. We can't pay half and pay the other half later. Everything that's due to bury that individual is required. So you can imagine, husband losing his wife or vice versa and coming in and needing to make arrangements and don't have the financial means to do so, and no arrangements are made. Then and they just lost their spouse. So it puts people in a tight situation.
Definitely.
So when you pre-arrange, you honestly are doing it for your loved one,
Right.
the person that's going to make that decision and be the
That
representative.
is true.
You
Thank
actually
you for bringing that up.
you're doing that for them.
A question. Well, 2 questions. First, I have my own question. So, how often do you see? So, life insurance that's supposed to help pay for
Yes,
that.
yes.
So, how often do you see life insurance, like people having life insurance to be able to pay for that?
Life insurance, that's definitely a great question, because life insurance is one of the best tools to have
Right.
to go along with pre-planning.
Right.
With life insurance, without having the pre-plans in place, average person may have about, if we just gave a rough estimate, let's just say $15,000, $20,000 in life insurance. Right now, we just said average cost of a funeral is between $7,000 to $10,000. So you can imagine that same individual lives for another 20 years. The life insurance doesn't grow, but the cost of that funeral will if you don't have arrangements. So life insurance, I tell people all the time, is meant for your loved one to be able to live and still enjoy and do the things they were able to do when you were here, not have to take that money and use it to put you in the ground. And then once they use that to put you in the ground, now they're stuck. You come from you're from a two-income household, one of those people passed, then that individual is still left with all those bills that we can split and doing everything like that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And yeah, so life insurance is certainly one of the best things, and I encourage people to make sure you have that, but have that along with your pre-arrangements.
Thank you for bringing that, because some people, I think a lot of people think, oh, I have life insurance, that's
Yeah.
fine, but I like the fact that you said that.
Yes.
But we do have a comment from JP Austin. She said, what are some pitfalls you've seen for when not having a plan?
Wow. Well, some pitfalls that I've seen personally is very, like I said, it's a lot of, every situation is different, but I've seen people where you have a funeral that's put on hold for weeks and weeks and weeks on time because you may have a couple that had a child together. They may no longer be together, and now that child may have some kind of way have passed, and that couple are not on good terms.
Oh, goodness.
But, both of them have equal rights to say, hey, this is where I like my child to be and things of that nature. And so you have situations like that happen. You have situations where family members, like I say, siblings, bicker between, hey, I know mama got $30,000 in life insurance. She needs the gold casket. She needs the horse and carriage. She needs the doves. All the things. And the other sibling is sitting there like, whoa, mama didn't even like horses. Mama didn't like nothing. Those type of things. So you have pitfalls that come into play in so many different angles, emotionally, physically, financially. Things like that happen just by not having, plans in place like that.
Awesome.
What are some like other mistakes you see people making? Like if you have to like narrow down like top 3 mistakes you see people making. What would you say those 3 things that come, like what are those things that come to mind?
The top 3 mistakes is figuring that the life insurance will take care of everything.
Okay.
People say, hey, I got life insurance. I ain't worried about it. When I die, they got enough money to put me in, do what they need to do.
Yeah.
But if you're dealing with someone that that's going to have to come and represent you, and this person may not handle situations and things like that as well as you may. They can catch a flat tire and their whole day is done.
Right.
So imagine them coming in having to deal with a death and pick out a grave and a casket and all those type of things. So, that's one mistake, is thinking that I have life insurance so I don't have to worry about it.
That's going to solve all my problems.
It's going to fix everything,
Yeah.
Okay.
And, the next thing is automatically figuring that the family is prepared to handle the emotional stress that's going to come along with it.
Right.
A lot of people, it's one thing when you're dealing with a person on an everyday basis, but then they lose someone close to them. And, we've all seen it, where people go through depression and those type of things.
Right.
And now that family member that was the outgoing one and encouraging one has now kind of taken an emotional step back, in their belief. So that's another mistake. If you take it on yourself, you grab the bull by the horns and say, you know what? Hey, I want to be at this place. This is how I like it to look. This is the song I want played. Whatever you want.
Right.
You can be as detailed as you would like. And one of the last mistakes is people think that they can't afford it. They figure, man, a funeral going to cost too much. I can't afford it. You can. You can. You can get it done with a little, sometimes it's $50 a month. You're able to put these plans on monthly payments where you decide what's comfortable for yourself, and you make your payments, like that way. So a lot of people figure, oh, I know it's going to be expensive. I know it's going to cost, so I'm not going to think about it. I'm going to just let my insurance take care of it. But really, if you're not detailed about your thinking and how you want to go, you really could set them up for even a worse downfall, thinking they got things in place and turn out it's not.
Gotcha.
Interesting. I have not a serious question, but I'm just curious. So you said people have to wait sometimes a week or a weeks. What have you seen? What's the longest you've seen somebody have to wait because they weren't prepared financially? And then a follow-up question is like, what would you do how long is the longest you would hold the body, I guess, just to say?
Well, again, it's kind of a case by case, but I've seen situations where, it's been almost 3 weeks, 3+ weeks. And sometimes those situations are due to people coming in from out of town and those type of things. You have to be wise about that. But just dealing on the financial reason as far as a hold up on it, man, I've seen the funeral home show up at the cemetery ready to do the service, but the person didn't have the money, and okay, we're going back.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so like they're not going to, and that's one thing about it. They have to be paid too,
Right.
because they're performing a service.
Yeah.
And so though you're hurting and those things, they still have to be taken care of. But that's one of the toughest, things, because you don't want to see a family have to go through that,
Yeah.
And so that's why I enjoy what I do when I get a chance to try to speak with people and let them know it is important, and it's very important to put preparations in place.
Got you. We have another question.
How long does the pre-planning process take, and how often should you revisit your plan in place?
Good question. Right now, most pre-plans are put on a 5-year payback. That's as far as with who I'm, Dignity Memorial, the company I work with. Right now, they're on a 5-year plan. It's no interest, no finance charges, nothing like that. So 100% of what you pay will go to your balance of paying it off. I think you should always revisit it, and once you have your plans in place, maybe kind of yearly, make sure you have your paperwork and these type of things, together. But once you set it and it's done, then you're pretty much good. You can kind of check that off the box and say, you know what, I know I got my life insurance taken care of. I've made preparations and places and things for my burial when my time comes. My family understands what I want. I'm good, And so that's why it's important to have the discussions, put the plans in place. And if you do it on a payment plan, normally they're about 5-year stretch. But you have options to pay it off whenever you like. And like I said, with no interest or finance, it's not a bad deal either.
Awesome. We do have a comment from Nikita Parker. He said, this subject is so needed. Many families are left in a really bad predicament because they aren't prepared. And then Monica Parker said, she has a question. What is the difference in end-of-life life insurance and life insurance?
End of life. Life insurance is pretty much, again, just simply money that's just there for you at the time when you pass. Some people have, like we call, burial insurance and all those things. The one thing, though, about the insurance is it does not grow. And so the important part about pre-planning is that the cost of burials and funerals will continue to grow. So you can have, like I say, a $20,000 policy in 2022. But just say if you don't pass or your time doesn't come for another 30, 40, 50 years, and you have that same policy, you worked at the same job, kept things pretty up, then that's the reason why it's important to pair the two together, the life insurance along with the pre-planning. Because just think about gas, if you 30 years ago, think about your first car, what it cost with gas 30 years ago, and if you knew you could freeze the cost at that point in time 30 years ago, you do it. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And this works the same way. It's like funerals aren't going to start getting cheaper. They're going to continue to grow. So having the life insurance, I definitely encourage to have that. But you want to talk and decide where actually you would like to be placed and make preparations to put those things in place when it comes along too.
Okay. Looks like. So we have another comment, question from Stephanie Miller. Would you recommend a living will along with pre-planning, or is that the same?
Good question. It's actually different. Your living will it's more specific as far as your personal belongings and these type of things and to that nature. Your pre-planning would strictly be based upon where you would like to be laid to rest, the type of service you would like to have. I want it at a church. I want it at a graveside, or I want it at East Lake Park, you know what I mean? And I want balloons released, but you have the ability to kind of actually put things together how you would want, and that's the thing that, and again, a will is very important because that helps, on another side when a death occurs. But just as far as your actual time and when it's time to actually do the burial, those things are, definitely handled better when you have them pre-planned.
Yeah. When you said the will, it made me think of you're surprised how many people don't have one, especially celebrities when they have millions of dollars.
Right.
And so you think, hey, if I have millions of dollars, I want to make sure no one's fighting over it. Or, but I think Aretha, it's not, I'm not going to name people, but I think a lot of people.
Yes.
A lot of
How you going to throw out the name and then say,
Then,
but I don't
I'm like, hold up, wait a minute.
You don't know which one I'm talking about.
Okay. All right.
That's good.
No, but there's a lot of celebrities that I'm just shocked
Yes.
if after it's said and done that
And
they didn't have a will, and
And
then
one
their
reason
families
is
just
because a lot of people figure, it's not going to be my time. They could be.
I'm good.
I'm good. Oh, I'm 40 years old. I got at least 20 more years, or I got at least
Struck by
30. You know what I mean? Right. And and so that. But if someone knew, hey, you got 5 more years,
Right.
to get things right, then you will see more wills, you will see more plans, more things put in place.
yeah.
But because we don't know, we kind of put it to the back and figure it just happened. And I got insurance, I got a will. Those things will be okay. But what about the individual, that has to come and stand there for you and make those preparations? Have you made it easier for them?
Right. You have to think about your loved
And
ones.
it's a very big difference when a family comes in and plans are in place. You're in the funeral home, cemetery, 15, 20 minutes. You don't have plans in place. Bring your lunch. Tell the boss you won't be back for a while because you got some business to take care of. You got to pick out graves. Like I say, you have to pick out the casket. You have to decide what songs are going to be sung, what clothes are going to be worn, who's going to be there, who's going to preach. It's so many details that go into it that it pays to the benefit to, prepare for it.
Okay. Okay. We have another question. 2 questions actually.
From Nikita Parker, are the vaults included in the plan?
Yes, you have options. You can build your plans. The vault is necessary for some people who may not know what the vault is. Right. So the vault is what actually goes into the ground first prior to the casket being lowered into it.
Okay.
Gotcha.
See, I thought that's either for documents or bodies. I was not really sure which one.
Vault,
Like all fancy over there. Like,
right. So the vault is very important and necessary for burials. So that's what actually goes into the ground. It protects the integrity of the casket and the body, besides just putting a casket into the ground. So a vault, everything from the vault, the opening and closing, the casket, everything, you can prearrange. So you can start small and say, you know what, I don't want to spend a bunch of money. I'm really not set like that, but I know I want to be at Elmwood Cemetery or Highland Memorial or whatever, and I'm just going to go and get my grave. And going to get that grave, you, like I say, maybe $50, $75. So depending on where you go, you can start as small as that. Or you can say, I want my entire package built. Give me everything I'm going to need. I don't want my family to do nothing. And you can get all of that put together, your vault, everything like that can be packaged together. And that way the family has no decision left to make.
okay. Awesome. Look, we learned something today because we were like, what's a vault?
Right, like the vault.
I
start speaking, I'm like, well, let me make sure
Thank
we
you
on the
for
same
that.
page.
Yes, I
What
was
vault
like,
is.
I
Right,
don't even know
right.
what that is.
Okay, we have a few more questions. Let's see. How would you recommend bringing up pre-planning with aging family members, especially if you don't want to offend them? And that's from J.P. Austin.
Great question. Great question. I think the best way to do so is to start with yourself and approach them in a way of, hey, grandma or papa or whoever, guess what I did today? What did you do? I went down to the cemetery. I sat down with him at cemetery. They're going to be like, whoa. You know what I mean? Stop me in tracks.
Right.
But you tell them your experience and what you've done and why you do so. And then it kind of opens the door to say, what about yourself? Have you made yours already? And they may tell you, no, I ain't really thought about that. Or y'all know what I want y'all to do with me. Just burn me up and throw me in
I'm
the
not even
back.
gonna lie. I thought you were gonna go a different direction. With that. Like, yeah, it's a grandma. So I was at the cemetery picking out your spot.
Right,
you know?
But you'll be surprised. It happens.
Yeah.
But honestly, when you have someone and older, family members, you don't want them to think, oh, they trying to put me in the grave. I ain't going to the hospital
Right.
to get checked out.
Right.
Nothing, because they might make a decision. But, you actually just, I like speaking from self-experience. And I think once you decide, you want to do so, make preparations, get questions or get things answered, so when you do go to your loved one and kind of try to inquire with them, it kind of makes that conversation a little easier.
I think that's a good key. Like, especially if you say, I did this. What
Yes.
about you?
Right.
So-
Have you ever done so before? You
Right.
know
Or
what I
I
mean?
went to a funeral and this happened. So have you thought
Yeah.
about it?
And a lot of times you'll be surprised that it seemed like some of the older generation have done some of these things, because back in the days, people like myself would go around and knock on doors in neighborhoods. They go to a neighborhood, knock on the door, talk to people about it, and make it real easy to do so.
Oh.
Now, we don't really get to get out like that. The
Come to
business
my
has to
door,
come
I'll
to
be
you. Like, you want me to do what? Bury me. Right. So, that definitely, it definitely is a conversation that needs to be had, but it's ways to walk into it and things. But the more you've kind of went into the situation yourself, the better, I think.
Awesome. I think we have another question from Alicia Daniel. How long of a payment plans can you do?
Payment plans normally stretch anywhere between 5 to 10 years.
Okay.
So just depending on what you set up, what's comfortable for you, normally between 5 and 10 years, you have the opportunity to set your payment plan. Again, with the payment plans going right now, it's no kind of interest, no finance on it. And I mean, that's one of the best deals around, because most places may give you 3 months, 4 months of finance, same as cash or whatever the case may be. But this is, whatever the price is, it's going to be stay there for you. So you have an opportunity to actually secure it with no other money being allotted to it.
Got it. Awesome.
So, what are some like crazy stories that you have from working with the funeral home? Like, what comes to mind when you hear that question?
Some of the craziest stories, like I say, just some of the conversations you hear with people, not prepared.
Yeah.
I saw the other day, I found it funny the other day on the internet or Facebook somewhere, and they had the dead body posted up in the club.
I was just
Did you
about
see
to.
that?
Actually,
And
I had that
man,
written down
I
here.
thought it was a joke. I'm like, there's no way in the world that's real, but yes, so. But
What you think about that?
well, I feel like people have the
Is there
right
like
to
a package for that or something? I'm just trying to figure out.
Right, we got a
how
club
come
package.
you get
Yes. Man, I feel like people could have the right to kind of grieve how they would like, but a certain amount of respect is due, for
Yes.
anyone. So I think that's a major.
Have you experienced anything like that at working at the funeral home? Like, as far as like people have crazy requests like that? Like,
Not that crazy. Not
Okay.
yet, what I mean? But I have experienced some funny conversations a lot of times, Yes.
yeah.
Yes,
I was talking to Jo'Van earlier. I was seeing this show. There was a show on TLC, like My Crazy Funerals, and it had like
Oh,
the most
wow.
wildest things, like
I can imagine.
at a carnival, like somebody dressed in costume,
Yeah.
a fountain of barbecue sauce,
Yeah.
and people dipping ribs in it.
Yes,
So it's
yes.
just some
We have-
crazy things.
We have cemeteries underground, like in Florida, where people like to be buried. You have scuba divers and people that did these things for a living, and they actually have like areas like in the sea, and their ashes are actually taken down, low and buried in an actual cemetery style setup underground. So I mean, man, it's
yeah.
so they go for a
One
visit.
last
They're not
thing.
getting too many visits, man.
Right.
But I mean, you would be surprised. Like I said, people have all types of imaginations and things that they like and how they would like to see themselves
Right.
be represented. So you'll see a lot.
Basically, I guess we're asking for a funeral home tea. You know what I'm saying? Which, when you say it, it sounds kind of bad. But
I know it. We want all the
That's what
juicy.
we're doing.
Right? Yeah, you
I'm
like
weak.
man.
I'm weak.
So we have another question from Nikita Parker. What is a low, medium, and high package price for a burial?
A low, medium, and high package. I've seen burials from anywhere between, like I say, average 7,000 to 10,000 on the low end, but I've seen them all the way up to 50,000. And I mean, for an individual, one individual. And I mean, that's the
This gold
14 karat gold casket. That's the
Okay.
big horse and carriage. That's going out, big monument, setup type deal. I mean, the food that's being served, steaks and, chicken and things like
I
that.
want
Can you
caviar.
explain the I don't want to say the psychology, but like the mindset of burying someone in a gold casket. I don't understand.
Uh-huh.
Because to me, they're in the ground.
Right, right,
You
right.
know, so
Yes,
I just
yes.
don't understand. Like, do you understand why people do that?
A lot of times it's just they have the financial means first, and a lot of times it's more an emotional buy. People figure,
I want the
I want
best.
them to have the best of the best. They deserve to have
Yes.
the best of the best, and I want the best casket. I want the best, church or ceremony that we could prepare. So most of the time, it's an emotional buy. I haven't seen anyone come in necessarily and prearrange something for themselves that much.
Okay.
On an at-need type basis, like somebody has passed and, the arrangements aren't set, they come in. But as far as on a prearrangement, most people that prearrange are going to kind of, go with what they would like.
Yeah.
But they're not going to go all too extravagant and things.
Yeah.
Most
I
of the time.
wonder if that gives so you like you said, the person that's prearranging for themselves, they're not picking that stuff, but it's the
Right.
person, the loved one, the close one.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if that just gives them more peace. You know,
Sometimes it does.
Like saying like, I did the best I could
Yes.
for them.
Right, right.
As much as I could, and maybe that gives them peace.
It does, and
Yeah.
that's why I never try to deter people from what they would want to do. It's just a matter of presenting what we have to offer or what they would like to see happen, and make that happen for them, And if they are comfortable with the pricing or whatever it's going to cost, we go from there. And if they're not, then we try to structure things, where it's comfortable for them. But you try to keep out of emotion. Like they say, don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry, So you try to prepare for these things. And if you can have them prepared, like I said, that individual you buying that $13,000 casket for, they may not have spent, $500 on their casket.
Right.
But, emotions.
Is there a range? So so I know a casket's a casket, but would you stay away from a certain tier of casket? I wouldn't. You know what I'm saying? Like they say, you're like, I mean, okay.
Right.
Is there?
Most caskets have are going to be 18 to 20 gauge. Kind of just
What does
like
that mean?
that means just the kind of the structure of it. Kind of like you have fencing. And you have fencing. Some gauge fences are a little bit stronger than some of the lower gauge ones. Outside
Is that a material? Like, what do you mean gauge?
that's kind of like the material that it's made out of.
So you have wood.
Yeah, wood, metal, different things like
Yeah,
that. So
wood one.
So wood. I mean, honestly, you can. It can have holes in it and
yeah,
everything.
but
It's fine.
most individuals are now going. Most places are now going. You can still get wood caskets, but a lot of them, the metal is best. So something that's metal.
What
But
do you mean best?
as far as compared to wood,
But in terms of best in what sense? Like when you I don't
for
understand.
the overall integrity of it, the overall integrity of the casket being placed in the ground,
Oh, it's
and because
Weather, yeah.
eventually it's down there forever, right?
Right.
So some point in time, it will get water or other things would be able to seep into it.
Bugs
But on the most part, on the majority part of it, that plays a factor into those things like that.
I got it. So basically, okay, I can see, especially if you're a loved one bearing your loved one, you're I think it would definitely give you peace if nothing is going to get inside the casket.
I mean, yeah, because you don't want, you try to make it as clean and good as possible for them.
Right.
Right. So,
I
you,
can see.
Might
Uh-huh.
go down
But
to
if
a cardboard box.
Yeah, I'll last a week and then worm food.
So, any stories that you want to tell us? We're all for the juicy.
oh man,
We're gonna wrap it up.
Wait, I have one more question.
Okay.
This isn't my question.
Okay.
Just say that.
all right,
Okay.
Are there any cases where someone gets taken out of the ground?
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, what cases is that? Like, why would someone get taken out of the ground after they've already been buried?
Sometimes you have people that's been buried, and a family member may decide they don't like that area anymore. They don't like that cemetery. They're moving out of town, and they want grandma or mom to go with them. They call it an actual disinterment. And so that's when, like you say, you actually go in the ground, remove the casket out. So it is expensive to do so. So it's not cheap to do that. So you don't find it often. But I have seen multiple cases, honestly, where people were like someone that was buried here in this particular cemetery, and now they're moving out of state or to another area, and they want that loved one to be there so they can continue to visit them. So it does happen, definitely.
And, I watch SVU. They'll dig them up for they think they did a crime.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
Autopsy.
that happens on Forensic Files. I've seen that.
Just me.
Well,
Sorry.
I'm glad that we talked about that last, because if I hadn't learned this stuff, I'd have been like, So what happens if they don't pay their bill? Do y'all take them out?
Right,
Like,
one collector,
you know what I'm saying?
like,
But no,
Cut that check bounce.
There you go.
Dig it back.
grandma's come back out.
Right. Sorry, man. Hey, them $10 you left on that account, you gonna make it there. So nah. But that's
And then charge her for the dig up.
yeah, like the whole time. But that's why, honestly, man, it's very important information, and I love to sit down like we're doing, and
Yeah.
just to speak with people and give them insight as far as what's required or what's going to happen or what to be on the lookout for.
Right.
Because you can imagine coming in never having to been through it and walking in and having to make this decision and do these things for someone. It can
Yeah.
be overwhelming.
Oh,
you know
definitely.
what I mean? And people may say, some people, like, hey, I need a break. Just hold off on the burial. Let me just get my mind clear.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that,
Yeah.
Right.
So that's why I say you're making prearrangements is a gift that you're leaving for your loved one. By putting those things in place, allowing them to grieve, allowing them to not have financial worries, and not allowing them to not have to worry about what they're going to do with X, Y, Z. They just come and sign their name, go and get, and grieve in their own way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I have I think this comment is geared towards you, Jo'Van. This is from Focused 40.
Oh, gosh.
It says, over time, the body turns to dust, and that person really not going to care because they're not actually in there anyway. So doesn't matter.
That is true. I mean,
So if you're in
like
a
spiritual,
cardboard box or a
and-
wood box.
Exactly. But that's definitely on the spiritual side. It's correct. But what it is when you have a loss and you don't have anywhere else to go, to still kind of connect with that individual, making sure they're in a. That's why the choice of the cemetery matters. Some people just say, hey, I'm looking for the cheapest cemetery, and you go put them there, and you might come back 6 months later and grass has grown up. You haven't found where they are. You can't get anybody in the office. So it does matter.
You
with
really
those
did
things.
put that in perspective. I never thought about that. But yeah, you do want to, if you want to come back and visit that site, where your loved one's buried, you want to know that they're in a good place.
Right.
That I can understand that for sure.
It matters. Yes, it did. Because if you're grieving over them and you come out there to visit, and then you come and you see, I know they were right here by this tree. What happened to that grave? It makes that process even harder to get to that closure. And sometimes just going out putting flowers on that grave, or coming cleaning off that headstone, or making sure the cemetery is properly kept up, helps that person cope along with their recovery. So it is important,
Yes.
Definitely. Yes.
Well, thank you so much for this. So we have two comments. So Focus 40 said, "It's the living." Sorry, you can read that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Focus 40. It's the living that thinks about those things from an emotional place. And then Monica Parker said, "I will care if my loved one's casket falls apart." It does matter. No. I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah.
No, that's so true. I'm sorry. That tickled me. I don't know why. I was like, I can't get that.
Right.
It's like your visit, and they're in heaven looking down. They're like, "Gosh, this thing lasted a week."
Right, like, man, come
That's
on.
how you
You
gonna
know,
do
you gonna do me.
turn to
You put me in a matchbox, man. Really. After I bought all that stuff for you, every
Right.
Christmas I gave
They
up-
do the cheapest thing and keep the money for
thank
themselves.
you.
This is a U-Haul moving box. Like,
This
what is
was
this?
yes. This one
You
I'm
need to
gonna
put tape on it.
This one I'm gonna give Grandma for them socks she gave me on Christmas. Here you go. We ain't getting no big cash. So
Like, no wonder there's so much grass here. I'm nutrients, man.
Right.
Bro, what?
Definitely.
Oh man, Frantonio Wesley.
Yes.
Thank you for
Thank you.
joining
Thank
us.
you
This
so
has been really
much.
enlightening.
Thank you all, man.
I know
Yes.
I learned a lot.
Yes.
And I know everyone else did. I really
Definitely
appreciate you joining.
appreciate this.
Thank you.
Yes.
I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity. And like I say, definitely if anyone is interested or just have questions, I can be reached by phone. You can give me a call on my phone.
Information, for sure.
205-427-4602. It'd be the best number to reach me on. You can also reach me on Facebook under my name, Frantonio Wesley. Search me, shoot me a message, anything like that, or Instagram, WesleyFran78, and I'll be happy to speak with you, answer any questions, and help you get to the process where you're comfortable to start to put things in place.
Well, we really appreciate you. So
Thank you
thank
all.
you.
Thank you all.
And
You're
thanks
great.
you guys for watching.
Yes.
And if you, for people going to watch the replay, please, if you have any questions, put them in the comments. We can definitely get to him and get those answered for you. But thank you for watching. And until next time, bye.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Bye.